Blood stained the pristine snow, a stark contrast against the biting white expanse. A lone figure scrambled through the desolate, snow-covered forest, breath puffing out in ragged gasps. Frustration etched his face as he cursed the overwhelming cold. He sprinted onward, confusion clouding his thoughts. Why was he being chased? A searing pain reminded him of the wound on his shoulder. He pushed forward relentlessly, but another sharp pain ripped through his side as he was struck again. He barely registered the agony before collapsing face first into the deep snow. A groan escaped his lips. A voice echoed through the trees, mocking his attempt to flee. The speaker advised him to die obediently, stepping closer. Emerging from the swirling snow, the man, flanked by others, addressed the fallen figure with cold formality as Master Baekjun. Panic began to set in as Baekjun questioned how everything had gone so wrong. His mind flashed back to a fateful moment, a bet he never should have made. It had started simply in a game chat room. A user named Supreme Lord had issued a challenge. Clear the game via a specific route, and a wish would be granted. He recalled his thoughts then, sitting before his monitor, musing if the wish could make him rich or handsome. It was strange. No one usually made bets in the veteran chat. He had just managed to clear the game using the character Baekjun. He wondered where the other players had gone, leaving only him and the message from Supreme Lord on the Heroes Road title screen. Heroes Road was a game set in a modern world where gates to another dimension unleashed monsters. Players controlled hunters fighting these threats. It promised growth, adventure in an elaborate world, hidden elements, and 5 distinct characters. Despite being single-player, it gained significant popularity initially. However, its fame was short-lived. A year after release, the clear rate was 0. The characters died easily, forcing players to restart from scratch. Its hellish difficulty, boasting an average clear rate of a mere 0.1%, led to its decline. Breaking down that rate revealed grim statistics. Excluding the main protagonist, hardly anyone cleared the game. In fact, only one person had ever cleared it using the character Baekjun. He sighed, remembering that player was him. His eyes scanned the nearly empty chat room list. He recalled there being over 10 people just moments before. He wondered if the game was truly dead, or if everyone had just moved to a new chat room without him. A truly sad thought if true. Suddenly, a notification announced Supreme Lord had entered. Oh, the chat room leader, he'd thought with mild surprise. The leader seemed puzzled to find someone still there, mentioning having kicked everyone out, ignoring the gamer's question about where everyone went. Then came the unexpected bet offer again. Clear the game via the proposed route for a wish. A wish? He idly wondered if asking to be rich and handsome would work, chuckling to himself. But what if he failed? The leader vaguely replied he'd think about consequences upon failure, urging him to try. The gamer found this deeply suspicious. The leader then asked if he'd cleared the game before. The gamer hesitated. If he revealed his unique achievement, the leader might brag about it before he could. He mused that hardcore gamers often turn into attention seekers. Perhaps the saying was true. This might be his only chance for recognition. The leader pressed again about the bet. Weighing his options, he figured even if it was fake, he had nothing to lose. He typed his agreement. The leader noted he was the last one, the best player so far. Of course, he thought smugly, he'd just completed the game with the final, hardest character. No matter the route proposed. His thoughts were cut short as his vision swam, the screen glitching erratically. A wave of dizziness washed over him. A final message pulsed on the screen. This is no longer a game. It's going to become reality for you. Darkness crept in. You chose to do this, the screen declared. He blinked, finding himself lying in the snow again, the world still spinning slightly. A dark, cloaked figure vanished into the blizzard just as he looked up. What was that? He struggled to his feet, looking around the endless white expanse, utterly lost. A sense of profound disorientation gripped him. His hand went to his head, grasping long strands of dark hair. Had his hair always been this long? He felt like he'd stumbled into a bad ice sky plot. His eyes narrowed, focusing. The figures from before materialized through the snow again. There you are, Master Baekjun. The leader, Shin Woo-hyun, greeted him coolly. Baekjun stared, recognizing the face of a game character. Was he dreaming? Why was he seeing Shin Woo-hyun? Shin Woo-hyun confirmed his identity with a smile, mentioning the day's training. Even the lines were exactly as Baekjun remembered from the game. Shin Woo-hyun apologized, stating that today's training would be far harsher than anticipated, his expression turning grim. The reason, he revealed, was that Baekjun's older brother wanted him dead. Before Baekjun could process this, Shin Woo-hyun lunged. Pain exploded in his arm as a blade cut deep. He choked back a cry. Shin Woo-hyun sounded almost impressed, noting he'd aimed for the heart, but Baekjun managed to twist away. He acknowledged that even with a weak body, the blood of a sword saint flowed within him, but declared that legacy ended here. As long as Baekjun lived, he was a shame to the clan. As a final courtesy for the time spent training him, Shin Woo-hyun promised a painless death. This couldn't be real. It wasn't a game or a dream, but how? No, he couldn't waste time wondering how. The stark reality was clear. If he messed up now, he would die. He forced himself to take a breath, trying to calm his racing heart. The wound throbbed fiercely, warm blood soaking his clothes and dripping down his arm. This pain was undeniable proof. This wasn't a dream. What was happening? What was he doing here? The final message echoed in his mind. This is no longer a game. It's going to become reality for you. The long hair, the wound, being hunted by Shin Woo-hyun in this snowy hellscape. It all clicked into place with dreadful certainty. He had become Yu Baekjun. Understanding the how didn't matter now, survival did. He'd played this game, this character's route, countless times. He needed to remember. The start of Yu Baekjun's route. Shin Woo-hyun watched him, face unreadable. The first step was always the same. Run away as fast as humanly possible. His pursuers watched his desperate flight. Shin Woo-hyun remained still, observing. Baekjun screamed, pushing his injured body, stumbling and falling again in the thick snow. Shin Woo-hyun's voice dripped with condescension as he remarked on the poor escape attempt, reiterating that obedient death would make things easier. He called out his name again, Master Yu Baekjun. Baekjun gasped, forcing himself onward, needing just a little more distance. Shin Woo-hyun continued, assuring him he wouldn't face the afterlife alone. After killing Baekjun, he planned to eliminate his other servants, including Choi Sungmin. He then casually asked if Baekjun had any last words. As he spoke, one of his companions glanced around, noticing the blizzard seemed to be intensifying suddenly. Baekjun slowly turned, catching his breath. Last words? Yes, he had some. He looked Shin Woo-hyun straight in the eye and delivered them with venomous clarity. Fuck off, loser. Shin Woo-hyun froze, stunned. A black shadow erupted from the snow beside him. A large, snarling wolf lunging for his throat. Before he could react, a sickening crunch echoed through the howling wind, followed by a spray of crimson. Shin Woo-hyun stared in disbelief, uttering a questioning sound. What had Baekjun just said? His eyes widened slightly in surprise, just as the massive black wolf lunged, its teeth sinking into his shoulder with a brutal crunch. The wolf howled, savaging him. Shin Woo-hyun managed to steady himself, observing the large beast, now standing over him, his sword stained with blood. He identified it as an ice wolf, wondering aloud if the previous scream had drawn its attention. Before anyone could react further, more howls echoed, followed by panicked shouts. A whole pack of ice wolves burst from the blizzard, descending upon Shin Woo-hyun's subordinates. He looked on with disdain, internally noting their fear. He thought that most of these young trainees would likely prove useless in the future. Still, the pack was an annoying obstacle. He knew he needed to deal with them quickly, but his priority remained Yu Baekjun. He turned, scanning the swirling snow, only to find the spot where Baekjun had fallen empty. Meanwhile, Baekjun groaned, having tumbled into a deep pit hidden by the snow. Pain flared through his body as he landed awkwardly. He clutched his side where he'd applied some hastily gathered herbs, wondering if he'd messed up the combination. He cursed inwardly. The pain was intense. Just then, a golden status window materialized before him. It announced that despite his lack of skill, his understanding of medicine allowed him to create a new ointment, startling him. Another window popped up, confirming he'd used an unnamed person ointment. The final notification stated his injuries would heal, and he'd gain high cold tolerance for a short while. His eyes widened slightly as he felt a warm sensation spread from his wound, the bleeding stopping and the flesh knitting closed. He let out a breath of relief, realizing he must have mixed the herbs correctly after all. That made sense. While he didn't know the other game characters well, he couldn't possibly forget Ubaekjun's route. He grimaced, recalling that it took him 2 long years to finally beat it. He paused, taking stock. He sighed, muttering that he was thoroughly screwed. Why did it have to be Ubaekjun's route? He recalled the lore. The Sword Saint clan, located in Korea's Sirak Mountain, was founded by the legendary martial god who helped resolve a major gate incident long ago. Though the martial god vanished, the clan thrived using the books he left behind, establishing itself as a reputable force. Ubaekjun was one of the 5 children in the main family with a right to succession. This reality, Baekjun thought, was so much harder than the game. Thanks to the ointment, he'd stopped the bleeding and wasn't freezing, but its effects would only last about 30 minutes at most. Time was short, and every decision mattered. He remembered seeing the status window message earlier. That meant the hero's road system was still active here. He commanded the system to show his status window. A panel shimmered into existence before him. He already knew, but seeing it was still disheartening. The status window displayed Ubaekjun's stats: Strength F, Agility F, Stamina F, Mana F, all at a pitiful 1 out of 100, with no innate abilities, traits, or skills listed. He knew it was bad, but seeing it laid out confirmed Ubaekjun's stats were basically F-tier garbage, making him little more than a walking scarecrow. This route started with a near-fatal injury, making it incredibly hopeless from the beginning. Any mistake meant death, compounded by bleeding out while being hunted. The Ice Wolves had bought him some time, but Shin Woo-hyun wasn't an easy opponent and possessed a tracking artifact, meaning discovery was inevitable. His abilities were rock bottom, and he had 0 items. How could he possibly survive? Moving forward, what was the key to surviving the Ubaekjun route? His eyes narrowed in determination. There was only one path, the Forest of Mazes. He knew there had to be a way out through there. Back near the pit, Shin Woo-hyun and his group surveyed the carnage left by the Ice Wolves. Suddenly, a pendant around Shin Woo-hyun's neck began to glow. One of his subordinates pointed it out. The tracking magic artifact was active. Shin Woo-hyun cursed Baekjun as a rat-like bastard, holding the glowing artifact and vowing to catch and kill him this time. He noted the direction indicated. One subordinate confirmed it pointed towards the Forest of Mazes. Shin Woo-hyun's face hardened. He ordered everyone to prepare to risk their lives entering the forest. This much, he thought, was necessary to gain Uterang's acknowledgement and secure his position. He strode forward purposefully. Baekjun pushed himself, gasping for breath as he ran. In the world of Heroes Road, monsters were humanity's main enemy, fought by hunters. Gate and monster difficulty varied greatly. Monsters fell into categories: easy, tricky, and difficult. However, there was one area all hunters avoided due to its extreme difficulty. The very place he was heading, Sirak Mountain. It was a living hell, unlike any other. Since monsters established their own ecosystems here like wild beasts, the already treacherous mountain terrain became a place hunters shunned. It was obvious that Sirak Mountain was no place for the current, pathetically weak Ubaekjun without a full guard detail. So why was he here? The answer lay with Master Shin Woo-hyun. As Ubaekjun's instructor since childhood, Shin Woo-hyun supported Baekjun's older brothers instead. While those brothers were away, Shin Woo-hyun received orders to kill Baekjun and lured him high into Sirak Mountain to do so. In essence, the player needed to survive these snowy fields and somehow return to the clan. That was the standard approach to Ubaekjun's route in the beginning. However, Baekjun stopped, his eyes landing on his goal. Found it, he breathed. The reason he'd been wandering instead of returning directly to the clan was the existence of an unrevealed secret in this rarely visited part of Sirak Mountain. Deep within the forest of mazes lay a hidden opportunity, marked by an ancient stone tablet bearing a stark warning. Those without the courage to lose their lives, those without ice-like cool-headedness and a broad view of the world, leave his place. Just as Baekjun reached the tablet, Shin Woo-hyun and his followers arrived behind him. One female subordinate nervously asked if they were truly entering the forest of mazes, worried they might suffer the same fate as the countless others who died there. Shin Woo-hyun acknowledged her concern, but stated he needed to confirm the corpse. He reassured her, telling her not to worry excessively, as they possessed the artifact from young Master Yu Taerang and wouldn't get lost. But something bothered him. Was Yu Baekjun always this brave? It felt as if he had become a completely different person. His gaze followed Baekjun's path towards the ominous forest of Maze's entrance. He announced that their target was moving. Examining the footprints, he noted the snow hadn't covered them much, meaning Baekjun passed recently and couldn't be far, especially considering his injuries. Their orders were clear: pursue and eliminate him immediately. The swirling snow partially obscured the path ahead. Shin Woo-hyun raised his fist, signaling the advance. He declared their direction, leading the group into the treacherous woods. They ran through the snow-laden trees. After some time, the female subordinate spoke up hesitantly. She addressed Shin Woo-hyun, expressing worry that they seemed to be walking in circles and questioning if they were on the right path. Shin Woo-hyun sharply reminded her of their location. Confused, she asked what he meant. He kicked at a nearly invisible corpse half buried in the snow, startling her. She quickly regained her composure and continued running. Shin Woo-hyun explained that this was the forest of the labyrinth. It was impossible to tell if one was progressing or merely looping back. He speculated that the man whose corpse they just passed likely wandered for days, maybe longer, before succumbing. That was the fundamental nature of this place. Letting one's guard down meant wandering until death. Meanwhile, Baekjun pushed himself against a large rock, gasping for air. He felt like he was truly about to die. These moments reminded him just how miraculous medicinal herbs could be. But more than the physical strain, it was the chilling realization dawning on him. He knew it instinctively, seeing the small drops of his own blood staining the snow. He could genuinely die here. He cursed the supreme lore guy under his breath, wishing he'd been warned about such a high-stakes bet. He admitted he'd been totally fooled, though ultimately, it was his own choice. Besides, he thought Riley didn't matter. He had also lied about not fully clearing the game. His stamina finally gave out, forcing him to stumble onward. He scanned his surroundings, breathing heavily, believing his destination should be nearby. Through the trees, he saw it. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips as he confirmed, found it. He stood at the edge of the labyrinth, a sheer, deep cliff face. He remembered the despair he felt the first time he reached this point in the game, thinking it was just cliffs after finding what seemed like an exit. He thought it was wasted time back then, but now that knowledge was invaluable. He steeled himself, knowing he needed complete focus from now on. It was about time. Just then, Shin Woo-hyun's voice echoed, calling his name. His pursuers had arrived. Shin Woo-hyun observed that Baekjun had run all the way there. Baekjun noted with grim amusement that Shin Woo-hyun wasn't even calling him master anymore. Shin Woo-hyun mocked him, questioning if all that running only led him to a dead end at the cliff's edge, declaring his meaningless resistance over. Baekjun turned, demanding why Shin Woo-hyun was doing this, accusing him of becoming Yu Taerang's dog. Shin Woo-hyun smirked, asking if Baekjun was only just figuring that out. He confirmed his decision to support Master Yu Taerang, whose strength, he believed, truly suited the Sword Saint clan. Baekjun listened, his suspicion confirmed. This was exactly like the game. Now that he was sure, wasting more time was too dangerous. If he delayed any longer, the cold, amplified by the ointment wearing off, would kill him. He plunged his hand into the freezing water pooling near the cliff edge, bracing himself against the shock. Shit, the frostbite wasn't the immediate issue. At this rate, he'd bleed out or freeze first. Shin Woo-hyun noted that all the talking had wasted too much time, predicting Baekjun would die before he even needed to strike the final blow. He offered to end it quickly, rather than letting Baekjun suffer a slow, painful death, calling it his last act of mercy. Baekjun shivered, sarcastically thanking him for his kindness. Since it was the end, he decided to reveal something too. He looked pointedly at the artifact around Shin Woo-hyun's neck. A flicker of confusion crossed Shin Woo-hyun's face. Baekjun smiled faintly, telling the idiot the artifact was single-use. Shin Woo-hyun roared Baekjun's name in fury, lunging forward. But Baekjun was already gone, throwing himself forward off the cliff edge. He leaped into the abyss, letting out a choked gasp as the impact with unseen forces below rocked his body. Shin Woo-hyun and his followers watched in stunned silence from the clifftop as Baekjun plummeted into the swirling mist below. After a moment, Shin Woo-hyun stared down into the empty white void. One of his subordinates hesitantly suggested that Baekjun was likely dead. Shin Woo-hyun grimaced, acknowledging they wouldn't be able to recover the body and ordering a retreat for now, though he worried if Master Yu Taerang would believe his report without proof. He glanced down at the now dull tracking artifact. He tried activating it again, but nothing happened. Why wasn't it working? Could Yu Baekjun have been telling the truth? Suddenly, guttural growls echoed from the forest behind them. They smelled human blood. Shin Woo-hyun and his group tensed as monstrous, orc-like figures emerged from the trees. He cursed their luck. They were far from safe. Far below, Baekjun slammed onto a rocky outcrop, jolting violently through the air before hitting the ground hard. He coughed violently, blood splattering the stone, struggling to push himself up, groaning in agony. His eyes narrowed with determination. Just then, a small, book-like object floated down, glowing brightly before him. A brilliant light flared as the book descended towards Baekjun. He instinctively reached out, his fingers grasping the ancient, glowing tome. Pain still racked his body, but a fierce determination burned within him. He needed to recover, and quickly. He slumped to the cavern floor, one hand protectively covering the book as its light pulsed softly. A familiar chime echoed as a status window appeared. The message stated that the martial god's book had verified his qualifications. Another followed almost immediately. His blood relations were also verified. The system then assessed his physical attributes, delivering the blunt verdict, a body with zero talent. Baekjun grimaced. He knew his starting stats were trash, but seeing it spelled out was still a low blow. Suddenly, a surge of golden energy erupted, engulfing him completely. The system announced it was forcibly awakening the dormant martial god's bloodline within him using the current system. Power unlike anything he'd ever felt course through his veins, his eyes glowing with an intense light as the energy crackled and reshaped him. Images and a voice flooded his mind. His ancestor, the martial god himself, speaking to whoever opened this book. The ancient warrior spoke of his life's ambition to record every martial technique in existence. Facing his own mortality, he left this book, imbued with the power to continue recording new arts even after his passing, urging its user to wield it for a just cause. Feeling revitalized, Baekjun felt a connection to the past, silently promising his ancestor he would honor that wish. The status windows updated rapidly. He had acquired the unique ability, Martial God's Book, and the S-rank trait, Heavenly Martial Physique. His body automatically improved, boosting all his attributes significantly. A quick check showed his stats, strength, dexterity, stamina, and mana, had jumped from F to C rank. The ability, Martial God's Book, EX, 1 star, and trait, Heavenly Martial Physique, S, were now listed, though he still lacked specific skills. He pushed himself to his feet, feeling stronger, healthier. A glance at his shoulder confirmed the deep wound Shin Woo-hyun inflicted was completely healed. Not only had his rank increased, but he'd gained an insanely overpowered unique ability and trait in the process. He recalled the mechanics of Hero's Road. No easy levels, just relentless grinding for traits, skill proficiency, everything. The Awaken route was infamous for its brutal difficulty, only made survivable by acquiring game-changing unique abilities and traits like these. The system helpfully displayed his new gains again. A confident smirk spread across his face. This immense power-up was precisely why he'd risked the perilous journey to the tomb. He delved into the details of the heavenly martial physique, trait. It was described as a heaven-sent talent, granting an ideal body for martial arts, greatly enhancing combat reflexes, learning speed, and the power of learned skills. It accelerated stat growth and skill proficiency gain, and could even unlock new skills randomly. It was, frankly, a cheat code for growth. Next, he examined the Martial Gods book, EX 1 star. Pinned by the legendary martial god, it automatically recorded every martial technique conceived, even those yet unknown. Furthermore, it allowed him to learn any recorded skill by spending accumulated points. Unique abilities like this were exclusive, impossible to teach or copy. His ancestors' power was truly phenomenal. Essentially, any skill existing in this world was now potentially learnable, extending beyond mere martial arts to include fantasy-based combat techniques. If it was a way to fight, he could learn it. It was a shame magic and alchemy seemed excluded, but he figured there were other ways to deal with those if needed. First things first, a notification indicated he'd received 100 points and could accept a new quest. The book displayed a list of skills he could learn: Tri-Sword Technique, Bash, Charge, Rafalda Principality Spearmanship. All combat-oriented and utterly useless for his immediate needs. Direct confrontation was still suicidal. But then his eyes landed on the perfect option, Mobility Technique. A martial art focused on lightening the body, improving speed, agility, and reflexes. Perfect for both fighting and, more importantly, escaping, a fundamental skill for any situation. Like having cheat codes for parkour. Plus, he mused, once his proficiency with the book grew, he could unlock even more interesting applications. With his first skill chosen, only one task remained: selecting a quest from the newly available list. Option 1 was Catch Me If You Can, which sounded like it would resolve itself later. He focused on Option 2. I'm sorry, Ancestor. Please help me be a righteous bandit just for today. He inwardly sighed at the ridiculously lame quest name, but accepted it anyway. Accepting the quest opened a complex, maze-like path within the tomb, promising early-stage rewards upon reaching the exit. He recognized this. It was the hidden reward route for clearing the Martial God's tomb. This should be easy. He proceeded through the newly opened passage, briefly wondering how Shin Woo-hyun and his goons were faring against those orcs, hoping, for their sake, they managed to escape. Unbeknownst to him, the scene back in the forest was grim, with one subordinate already fallen, prey to the monstrous orcs. A lone orc patrolled near Shin Woo-hyun's hiding spot. Shin Woo-hyun himself was crouched behind a tree, trembling, terrified, as a colossal white serpent appeared, engaging him. Deep within the tomb's passages, Baekjun located and gathered the necessary quest items. Rare medicinal herbs glowing faintly in the dim light. He checked his inventory: sun herb, fire spear herb, and the coveted fire ginseng. Yes, that was everything. All that was left was to open the large wooden chest waiting at the end of the passage. He heaved the heavy lid open. Inside rested a glowing, 1,000-year-old snow ginseng and a simple drawstring pouch. System messages confirmed the acquisition: 1,000-year snow ginseng and treasure keeper's pouch. Quest complete. Rewards: 500p and Black Demon, row granted. With its role fulfilled, the Martial God's tomb began to destabilize, initiating his return to the surface. Baekjun sat calmly beside the open chest as the cavern trembled, a satisfied smile gracing his features. There was a certain romantic charm to the whole situation. finding a hidden tomb beneath a cliff, a classic wuxia trope perfectly suited for the legendary martial god. Though he still found it annoying how these inheritances were always stashed in ridiculously perilous locations like the Forest of Mazes. Still, the reward definitely justified the risk. The greater the struggle, the sweeter the loot. He stood, the newly acquired black demon, robe materializing on him as he offered a silent thanks for the items. A status window detailed the A-rank robe's properties, crafted from rare materials, incredibly sturdy, offering demon appearance and adaptability. A bright light enveloped him as the tomb collapsed and teleported him away. He materialized back outside, finding that night had fallen. He was standing in the snow near the Sword Saint clan's main gate observation post. Inside the lit building, a guard was absorbed in a game on a handheld device when someone off-screen called out that his Ramian was ready. The guard replied he was coming up. As he glanced back at his retro monster fighting game, a game over screen suddenly flashed, surprising him. He looked up towards the window, noticing an odd reflection in the glass. What kind of pattern was that? It didn't look normal. He squinted, puzzled, then startled. Was that a monster? No. Wait, it was Master Yu Baekjun. Baekjun, outside the window, tersely ordered the guard to fetch Choi Sungmin. The guard stammered, asking him to repeat that. Baekjun's voice hardened as he repeated the command, calling the guard a bastard and telling him to bring Choi Sungmin immediately. A flashback showed Yu Baekjun running desperately through the snow, clutching his wounded side, fear etched on his face as a bright light flared behind him. He collapsed moments later, leaving only bloodstains on the white ground. Transitioning abruptly, the scene shifted to a well-appointed room within the Sword Saint clan's estate. A concerned voice wondered aloud if the young master would wake up, noting he had been unconscious for 4 days now. Another, older voice chided the first for impatience, advising they wait a bit longer. The speaker, identified as Ju Jungwon, the esteemed physician of the Sword Saint clan, reiterated that the young master's condition wasn't due to physical injury. Choi Sungmin, Baekjun's young servant, looked puzzled, asking why his master remained unconscious if not injured. Jungwon admitted uncertainty about the exact cause, but observed that Baekjun had no apparent injuries. In fact, he seemed physically healthier than before, though his troubled state suggested a nightmare. As if on cue, Baekjun's eyes snapped open. He shot upright with a loud yell, startling both attendants. He gasped for breath, looking wildly around the unfamiliar room. Sungmin and Jungwon expressed immense relief that the young master was finally awake. Baekjun stared at them, utterly confused, wondering if this was just another layer of dreaming, like some kind of dreamception. Sungmin looked bewildered by his master's strange reaction. The reality began to sink in for Baekjun. He scrambled out of bed, flung open the window shutters, and let out a bewildered shout into the open air. Below, in a courtyard, clan trainees were practicing diligently, urged by their instructor to be quicker and sharper. 2 trainees chatted nearby about their next assignment, a B-rank gate in the western region, needing clearance before it expanded beyond the mountain. Still reeling, Baekjun asked aloud where he was. Jungwon gently informed him he was in the Sword Saint clan compound, adding that it was also his home, gesturing towards the sprawling, magnificent estate visible outside. Baekjun stared, stunned, finally accepting this wasn't a dream. Jungwon observed his disorientation and inquired if he felt pain anywhere. Baekjun mumbled about a slight headache. Jungwon concluded he needed medicine and turned to prepare some, while Sungmin eagerly volunteered to fetch food. Baekjun stopped Sungmin, who paused, asking if his master needed anything else. Baekjun asked what day it was. Sungmin informed him it was the 15th, meaning he'd been asleep 4 days. Baekjun then pressed for the year. January 2035, Sungmin confirmed. The date clicked. It matched the game's starting point. Sungmin excused himself to bring food quickly. Left alone, Baekjun looked at the glowing status window hovering over his lap. The date was right. A notification confirmed the "Catch Me If You Can" quest, escaping Shin Woo-hyun, was cleared, awarding 100p. There was no denying it. This was definitely real. He let out a long breath, relieved to have made it back safely. The clan grounds looked peaceful under the clear sky. Later, Baekjun sat before a hearty meal, contemplating his situation. He had returned home as planned, but this place wasn't necessarily safer than the snowy wilderness. The Sword Saint clan annex was a viper's nest of power struggles. It was inevitable for children of powerful clans to vie for control. He thought of his siblings, Yu Taerang, the ruthless eldest son, Yu Jungian, the eldest daughter, Yu Kangho, the third son, and Yu Min, the fourth daughter. And then there was him, Yu Baekjun, the youngest, currently just trying to eat his steak. Originally, there were 3 more children, but Taerang had killed them, a common, albeit brutal, sibling power struggle. It was safe to assume Taerang would become the successor. He would most likely be the next clan head, a fact the other children were well aware of. The quick-witted Kangho had already sided with Taerang, while Jungian had mostly given up ambition, and Min held no interest in leadership. So why kill the other 3 siblings? Because their beloved eldest brother, Yu Taerang, was the type who wouldn't overlook any possibility for future disputes. His goal was to end the succession struggle decisively, a horrifying principle he actually put into practice. He left no space for any potential rival faction to form. Taerang sought absolute power. Baekjun took another bite, acknowledging the food was good. In summary, the main villain of his rout was his eldest brother. Since today was January 15th, 2035, matching the game's timeline, he knew that in exactly 2 years, their father, Yu Muhak, would pass the clan leadership to Taerang. If Baekjun didn't deal with Taerang before then, he was fated to die at his brother's hands. So, he had 2 years, maybe less, because once Taerang gained absolute authority, Baekjun's chances would plummet. Sungmin returned, misunderstanding Baekjun's murmured 2 years, asking if he needed something. As Sungmin cleared the dishes, Baekjun thanked him. He knew Taerang was currently occupied with a gate incident in Sirak Mountain and wouldn't return for exactly 2 months. Grabbing his pouch, Baekjun announced he'd be back soon. Sungmin protested, concerned about his master's recovery. This clan was ruled by power. Strength meant acknowledgement. Thankfully, he headed towards the medicine room. The Sword Saint clan had resources, including excellent teachers. First, he needed to get stronger. Inside, Jungwon was busy grinding herbs. The physician looked up as Baekjun entered, remarking that he must have been on the 2nd floor. Baekjun apologized for entering without permission, carrying the pouch he'd received from the tomb. Explaining he hadn't found Jungwon downstairs, he humbly asked if it wasn't too much trouble, he could perhaps look around. His expression turned earnest, revealing his first step to rapid growth, becoming the physician's disciple. Jungwon paused, clearly surprised by the request to be watched while he worked. Baekjun confirmed, adding a layer of justification by stating he was curious about his own current condition after the incident, leaving the old physician momentarily confused. The narrative shifted focus to Ju Jungwon, a physician who had served the clan since the previous head's reign, possessing special healing skills and affinity. He held no interest in the clan's power struggles, dedicating himself solely to herbs and medicine, which was why he remained without a disciple despite his desire to pass on his lifelong knowledge. His loyalty was to his craft and the clan, but sadly, none of the clan members saw value in learning pharmaceutics when they could simply purchase remedies. This lack of interest had left Jungwon discipleless. However, Baekjun saw an opportunity. He needed an elixir for rapid strength gain, and for that, pharmacist Ju Jungwon's oriental medicine formulation skill was essential. Jungwon, finally acknowledging Baekjun fully, remarked that creating the current medicine had taken longer than anticipated. He apologized, attributing his slowness to his aging body. Baekjun brushed off the apology. Sensing an opening, Jungwon inquired if the young master was perhaps interested in pharmaceutics. Baekjun's face lit up as he eagerly affirmed his interest, stunning the elderly physician. Baekjun claimed he'd been studying from books on his own. He then demonstrated surprising knowledge, identifying the faint scent of peace herb and dream flower Jungwon was working with, deducing the medicine was for soothing aches and mental stability. Jungwon was astonished that Baekjun could tell merely from the scent. Baekjun elaborated, mentioning he couldn't learn everything from books, so he'd foraged and even eaten various herbs, including, apparently, poisonous ones like the scream herb he now identified in the mixture. A true challenge accepted moment. Jungwon stammered that Baekjun was correct. He'd added the poisonous herb for a specific reason, explaining that when processed correctly, it became a potent vitality enhancer. The physician looked utterly dumbfounded. A wave of realization washed over Jungwon. What a shame. The young master's true talent lay not in martial arts, the clan's highest priority, but in the life-saving arts of medicine. If only he weren't a descendant of the Sword Saint clan. Changing the subject slightly, Baekjun asked what Jungwon had heard about his recent incident from Choi Sungmin. Jungwon repeated the fabricated story. Baekjun went for a walk alone and was attacked by monsters. Just as Baekjun thought, Jungwon was unaware of Shin Woohyun's assassination attempt. Baekjun continued his act, stating the incident made him appreciate medicine's utility in danger, lamenting that he never learned properly and needed to study more. Seeing the apparent sincerity, Jungwon eagerly offered to teach him personally. Baekjun feigned surprise, asking if the esteemed pharmacist would truly teach him, citing Jungwon's busy schedule. Jungwon chuckled, dismissing his own busyness, insisting he would make time to instruct young Master Yu Baekjun. Baekjun expressed profound gratitude for the opportunity. Jungwon, equally honored, suggested Baekjun ingest the newly completed medicine first. The scene shifted briefly outside the estate. A quest window popped up for Baekjun, become pharmacist Ju Jungwon's disciple by demonstrating sufficient knowledge. Back in his room, Baekjun felt confident. Passing Jungwon's test and learning the formulation skill wouldn't be hard, having mastered it countless times in the game. He reaffirmed his trust in Jungwon and Sungmin. Unlike the power-hungry Shin Woohyun, Sungmin's loyalty stemmed from past gratitude, though his lack of martial talent limited his future prospects. Still, Baekjun knew Sungmin would never betray him. Then, a new, ominous quest appeared, the first steps to escaping anchovyism, demanding he run for at least 5 hours straight. Baekjun sighed, foreseeing immense suffering. Just then, Sungmin entered, shocked to hear Baekjun intended to exercise. Baekjun confirmed, dismissing his bewildered servant. Sungmin remained confused by his master's sudden dedication. Baekjun recalled his father's cruel words, branding him weak and incompetent, banishing him. The Sword Saint clan operated on survival of the fittest, a brutal truth. The original Yu Baekjun was kind but lacked the martial prowess valued above all, leading to constant disregard, even mockery from trainees about his frail build. He could have lived peacefully with books, but this clan demanded strength. Putting on trainers, Baekjun began the grueling run. Initially, it felt surprisingly manageable, but exhaustion quickly set in. He pushed on, feeling like death warmed over, questioning his body's limits. After what felt like an eternity, a notification chimed. Quest complete. He received 50p and a strength increase, with Part 2 announced. He collapsed, utterly spent, admitting it wasn't doable at all. Still, checking his status window revealed the 6 hours yielded better results than expected, boosting his stats significantly. Relief washed over him. Things would be different now. He knew the Qigong technique theory, but wasn't sure his body could keep up. Focusing his chi, he activated the skill, feeling his body lighten as his speed increased dramatically. He recognized the sensation from his escape from the martial god's tomb. It was incredibly convenient to activate the skill at will. Panting, he noticed an unpleasant smell. A smug voice nearby identified the stench as a rotting corpse, belonging to his sweating younger brother. It was Yu Kangho, his third brother, observing him with disdain. Baekjun tensed, wondering why Kangho was there. Yu Kangho stood with his posse, remarking disdainfully that the scent of Baekjun's sweat was fouling the clan's air and demanding to know what he was doing. Baekjun, still catching his breath on the ground, acknowledged his brother Kangho, noting inwardly it was about time for him to appear. He forced a smile and explained he'd been exercising. Kangho returned the greeting curtly, adding mockingly that they wouldn't meet if Baekjun just hid in his room all day. He then questioned why Baekjun was exercising at all. Baekjun internally scoffed. Kangho was barely older, but acted like a condescending boomer. Still smiling, Baekjun quipped that an exercising idiot was still an idiot, thinking how snobbish his brother sounded. This was Yu Kangho, the third son, also known less formally as the clan's resident spender and womanizer, basically the clan's ass, a man prone to causing trouble wherever he went. Baekjun stuck to his cover story, mentioning the recent monster attack as his motivation for training. Kangho laughed dismissively at the idea. He called the training a waste of time, but offered his help if Baekjun needed it, punctuating the offer with a swift kick that sent Baekjun sprawling. Kangho sneered, offering his kind help, just as he had in the past, before turning and leaving with his group. Clenching his fist on the ground, Baekjun seethed. He vowed internally that Kangho would be dead to him. He desperately wished he could fight back immediately, but knew the time wasn't right yet. The priority now was clear: get stronger. As if on cue, the next phase of the quest popped up, the first steps to escaping anchovyism, 2, requiring 3 hours of strength training for another reward. With grim determination, Baekjun prepared to move. Later, back in the relative quiet of his room, Baekjun consulted the glowing martial gods book. He needed offensive skills. The book presented options: strike, a basic mana infusion technique costing 100p. Then there were the Tri-Fist technique and Tri-Mind technique, described as pathetic back-alley skills teaching basic jabs, elbows, and uppercuts costing 50p each. He calculated his points: 500p from the tomb, plus 100p earned from the anchovyism quests. Nice. By tomorrow, he'd have enough points to learn the skill he truly wanted: attribute manifestation. Attribute manifestation was an A-rank skill used by the formidable Yoon Sangha, allowing the user to fill their weapon with overflowing mana. Its drawback was immense mana consumption, making it difficult to use effectively. Still, its potential, especially combined with the 1,000-year snow ginseng, was staggering. In contrast, the Tri-Fist and Tri-Mind techniques seemed laughably basic. Strike wasn't too bad, though, third-rate martial arts, even if trained to the extreme. Yet, Baekjun planned to learn these basic skills for a simple reason: an upcoming event required them. Over the next 4 days, while diligently working to escape his anchovy physique through grueling training, Baekjun also continuously impressed Ju Jungwon with his medicinal knowledge. He identified herbs like tilting grass, explaining its paralyzing poison and how proper preparation could turn it into an energizing component. Jungwon's eyes practically sparkled with admiration for his unlikely student. Baekjun passed Jungwon's tests, repeated the physically demanding quests, and accumulated points. Finally, a notification confirmed he had acquired the Oriental Medicine formulation, B skill, enhanced due to Jungwon's expert guidance. He smiled with satisfaction. Jungwon praised him, stating Baekjun was now a great pharmacist, more talented than most. Baekjun remained silent for a moment, confirming his suspicion. The glowing system windows were visible only to him, just like in the game. Dismissing the thought, he humbly attributed his progress to Jungwon's teaching. Then, he stated he wanted to make a certain medicine and asked for the physician's help. Intrigued, Jungwon inquired what he intended to create. Jungwon's eyes widened in shock as Baekjun carefully revealed the legendary 1,000-year snow ginseng, along with other rare ingredients like sun herb, fire spirit herb, and fire ginseng. The physician looked momentarily stunned, then realization dawned. He asked if Baekjun's supposed monster attack was actually related to finding these treasures. Baekjun sheepishly apologized for not being entirely truthful, though he reasoned it wasn't exactly a lie. Jungwon waved it off, saying he understood completely. He would have done the same for such a valuable find. Baekjun thanked him for understanding. Jungwon marveled at the potent energy radiating from the snow ginseng, confirming its authenticity despite never having seen one before. He asked what kind of medicine Baekjun planned to make. Baekjun explained his goal: to create a pill maximizing yang energy, potent enough to suppress the snow ginseng's overwhelming yin energy. Jungwon looked startled, asking if Baekjun intended to. Baekjun confirmed with determination. He would consume the 1,000-year snow ginseng. Jungwon now understood the purpose behind Baekjun's intense exercise regimen over the past few days. Filled with excitement, the old physician readily agreed, eager to begin crafting the pill immediately. Under the moonlight, they worked together, Baekjun utilizing his newly acquired Oriental medicine formulation skill, enhanced by Jungwon's presence. A system notification chimed. Extreme Yang Pill A created a potent concoction made by an incredible pharmacist. The pill glowed with warm energy. Baekjun sat cross-legged, the pill and the snow ginseng before him, reflecting that he hadn't initially known he'd used the herbs obtained from the martial god's grave like this. Jungwon assured Baekjun he would watch carefully and call for help if things looked dangerous. Baekjun agreed, taking a deep breath. He picked up the Extreme Yang pill, broke it, and swallowed half. Instantly, fiery energy erupted within him, causing Jungwon to gasp as Baekjun's body was engulfed in intense red power. Baekjun grunted, his eyes glowing fiercely with contained power. The heat was unbearable, a scorching inferno threatening to consume him, but he knew he had to endure it. The yang energy hadn't fully permeated his body yet. He focused, waiting for the energy to slowly begin circulating. His eyes snapped open. The moment was now. He swiftly grabbed the 1,000-year snow ginseng and consumed it without hesitation. The effect was instantaneous and violently opposite. An explosion of glacial blue energy surged through him, freezing every meridian in his body. He grit his teeth against the numbing cold, his hair floating wildly as the yin energy overwhelmed him. He cursed inwardly, realizing he needed to channel the rampaging energies more calmly. Jungwon cried out in alarm, witnessing the chaotic blue aura engulfing Baekjun, who levitated slightly off the floor. This wasn't good. The physician declared he needed to call for help immediately. But before Jungwon could move, Baekjun's hand shot out, firmly gripping his knee to stop him. Jungwon stared, bewildered, as Baekjun began performing a cultivation technique. The physician recognized the process, but noted internally that this specific technique wasn't one used within the Sword Saint clan. Baekjun was employing the Trimine technique, that supposedly sad and pathetic method, using it now to desperately gain control over his mana flow. Slowly, the turbulent blue energy began to smooth out, flowing in a controlled, albeit powerful, current around Baekjun. He breathed out, finally stabilizing the overwhelming power. Jungwon could only mouth the word impossible. Baekjun confirmed inwardly that the energy was finally circulating properly. The physician couldn't believe his eyes. It was a miracle Baekjun had even survived ingesting the ginseng, let alone performing a successful cultivation technique, and an unfamiliar one at that, immediately afterward. Baekjun closed his eyes, fully absorbing and harmonizing the power, his own eyes gaining a faint blue luminescence. The process finally concluded under the quiet moonlight. Baekjun walked calmly out into the courtyard. A still astonished Jungwon followed, asking how the young master had trained such a cultivation technique. Baekjun chuckled, scratching the back of his neck nonchalantly, claiming he'd just copied something he saw someone else do. He felt he'd covered it up adequately, though he suspected the old physician was now overestimating his baseline abilities quite significantly. Finding a clear space, he decided it was a good spot and activated his status window. His strength, dexterity, and stamina were now C rank, 20 out of 100, but his magic power had jumped significantly to be rank 7 out of 100. He still possessed the Book of the Martial God, the heavenly martial physique trait, and his learned skills, including the newly acquired attribute manifestation, A. Furthermore, the elixirs provided temporary buffs, drastically increasing stat and skill growth rates, along with fatigue recovery. He felt great. The magic power increase and the buffs were excellent outcomes. Now, clenching his fist, it was time to test his new A-rank skill. He focused, channeling the mana according to the principles of attribute manifestation, a skill created by the magic swordsman Yun Sanga to contain her overflowing power, fusing strength and magic into an aura. Yun Sanga, a named character from Heroes Road, possessed the unique ability Dragon's Heart, granting her an insane amount of mana. Feeling the power build, Baekjun slammed his fist into the ground. An explosion of frost and raw energy erupted outwards, shattering the courtyard floor into icy shards. As expected, the A-rank skill was undeniably powerful. However, the cost immediately hit him. He gasped, doubling over as the immense mana drain left him breathless. It was to be expected, he reasoned, since the skill was designed for Yun Sanga's massive reserves. He acknowledged that he only managed to pull it off thanks to the massive boost from the 1,000-year snow ginseng. Normally, attempting such a skill would be reckless. He mused on Yun Sanga's whereabouts, guessing she was likely in the US around this time according to the game's timeline. It would be interesting to meet her later. For now, it was time to prepare for the first main event. The next morning arrived. Choi Sungmin brought Baekjun's breakfast, remarking that the young master had been getting up unusually early lately, causing the servant himself to lose sleep. Baekjun inquired if anything special was happening with the clan that morning. Sungmin hesitated before explaining that, since it was Sunday, the clan members would be observing the trainees' morning training session. He added that he had been asked if they wanted to observe, but had declined, remembering Baekjun disliked it intensely the last time he went as a child. To Sungmin's utter shock, Baekjun announced he would be going this time. Baekjun stated coolly that participation was his duty as a clan member. Sungmin reminded him of the childhood incident, how Baekjun had vowed never to watch again, which had infuriated the clan master. Baekjun cut him off, noting they only had an hour, and instructed Sungmin to get ready and inform the relevant people of his participation. Sungmin hesitantly agreed. They walked together through the clan grounds. Other clan members noticed them, whispering and wondering why Baekjun, of all people, was heading towards the training observation. Baekjun ignored their stares. The narrative explained the old custom. Trainees endured group sessions each morning, observed by instructors and family members. Baekjun considered it a useless custom as he continued walking. Among the observers seated on the platform, one figure stood out. Yumahak, the current formidable head of the Sword Saint clan. Baekjun approached the elevated platform where his father, Yumuhak, sat enthroned. The pressure radiating from the clan head and the assembled figures was intense. Yumuhak, the master, exuded an imposing aura. Standing behind him were the formidable master combat instructors. A voice called his name. It was his eldest sister, Jian, seated nearby. She inquired with superficial concern if he was all right after the reported monster attack. Identifying her as the eldest daughter, Baekjun offered a polite, forced smile, confirming he was well thanks to physician Ju Jungwon's help. From another seat, his brother Kangho sneered, calling Baekjun a loser. He questioned how a member of the Sword Saint clan could nearly die from mere monsters, declaring Baekjun a shame to the family. Baekjun internally urged himself to endure and think happy thoughts. His gaze shifted to the figure beside Kangho. It was Yumin, the fourth daughter, observing him with detached amusement. He remarked on hearing Baekjun frequented the medicine room, suggesting it suited someone talentless in swordsmanship who preferred reading books. Baekjun sighed inwardly. He had tried to ease into things, but it seemed the main event needed to start sooner. Kangho continued his insults, calling Baekjun pathetic and ordering him to follow later so he could teach him proper swordsmanship, nearly slipping and saying kill. Baekjun finally looked directly at Kangho, his patience gone, asking coolly if his elder brother could please shut his mouth. The instructors seemed impassive, while Yumin watched with faint interest. Baekjun stood before his seated siblings. Kang Ho looked utterly bewildered by the sudden retort. Baekjun continued, remarking he could smell Kang Ho's foul breath from a distance, asking if his brother hadn't noticed the smell after all those cigarettes and coffee. Kang Ho sputtered, asking what Baekjun had just said. Baekjun took a step back, advising him to brush properly and scrape his tongue if he planned on chasing women. Jian Jian subtly covered a smirk, while Kang Ho trembled with barely suppressed rage. The third brother shot up, calling Baekjun a bastard and accusing him of having a death wish. Ignoring the fuming Kang Ho, Baekjun knelt respectfully before his father. He stated he had a request. He wished to learn martial arts. As the trainees began their drills in the background, executing the heaven-surging sword techniques, first form, the observers watched Baekjun. His father, Yumuhak, finally spoke, asking what Baekjun was doing there, stating it wasn't a place for someone uninterested or untalented in martial arts. Baekjun replied he'd recently developed an interest. His father pressed, reminding Baekjun he'd always claimed he didn't want to learn techniques meant to kill. Baekjun acknowledged his past words, but explained that his near-death experience had changed his perspective. Rather than die helpless, he now desired to learn martial arts for survival, having cast off his previous foolish thoughts. His father remained impassive, asking, "And what about it?" Baekjun declared his wish to study under one of the 4 master combat instructors. The instructors in question remained silent. Kang Ho burst out laughing, finding the notion ridiculous that someone like Baekjun deserved instruction from master. Yumuhak stated flatly that Baekjun's talent for martial arts was worthless, deeming it a waste of time for anyone to teach him, especially a master combat instructor. Baekjun met his father's gaze, asking what if he did have talent. He knew exactly what his father would say. He would prove his talent, enough to warrant a master combat instructor's teaching. Yumin raised an eyebrow, inquiring how he planned to do that. This was the first main event. Baekjun declared that in exactly 1 week, he would defeat brother Yu Kang Ho in a spar right there. Kang Ho's face went slack with disbelief. Yumin remained silent. Kang Ho, regaining his senses, looked furious, accusing Baekjun of joking and mocking him. Baekjun ignored Kang Ho, turning back to his father and asking for his decision. A slow smile spread across Yumuhak's face. He agreed, stating he'd like to see Baekjun try. However, he warned this would be Baekjun's last chance. If he failed, he would no longer be considered a member of the clan. He should be prepared to risk at least that much. Baekjun readily agreed, accepting the terms. Leaving the platform, Baekjun walked away, some men trailing nervously behind. He had only 1 week. Defeating Kang Ho meant securing training from a master instructor, essentially getting a new skill for free. He glanced at the mana scarecrows used for training, constructs infused with mana to allow limited movement and attacks. A smirk touched his lips. Yu Kang Ho, he thought, was already dead. Following Baekjun's bold declaration, whispers immediately spread among the clan members observing the training grounds. They murmured incredulously about the weakling Yu Baekjun actually training, recalling how he supposedly ran off crying the last time Kang Ho tried to train him, predicting this attempt would be just as entertaining and short-lived. Unseen by the gossiping onlookers for now, Baekjun began his relentless training regimen. He practiced the Tri-Fist technique, a basic fighting style often dismissed as something only back-alley thugs learned, focusing on simple punches and elbow strikes. He integrated this with swift movements using the Qinggong technique, closing distances rapidly before unleashing mana-infused strikes against resilient mana scarecrows. The force of his blows sent the training dummy flying. From a distance, Master Instructor Han Songa watched his movements without expression. For 3 days, Baekjun had repeated this pattern, relentlessly pounding the mana scarecrows, reducing them to fragments. He panted, catching his breath between repetitions. Grandmaster Lee Kunmo stood nearby, also observing. He noted to Han Songa that there wasn't anything particularly special about the young master's training. He merely ran around using Qin Gong and fought dummies with the crude tri-fist technique. Yet, Kumo seemed perplexed. She wondered aloud how Baekjun possessed the energy for such prolonged exertion, and why his posture remained stable despite the duration, showing a strange level of experience. Most puzzling was the choice of fist techniques in a clan devoted to the sword. Han Song-ah remained thoughtful. When Lee Kunmo inquired about her thoughts, she simply stated it was nothing. Kunmo then probed, asking if she had reconsidered supporting Utaerang. Han Song-ah firmly declined, politely thanking him but stating her mind remained unchanged. She bid Grandmaster Lee Kunmo farewell, subtly suggesting it would be more convenient for his faction if she supported Taerang. She watched him depart before turning her attention back to the training grounds. Night fell over the clan estate. Baekjun finally stopped, breathing heavily from exhaustion. He looked over the field littered with the remnants of destroyed mana scarecrows, remarking with satisfaction that he'd certainly beaten them to a pulp. He sat down, reflecting. He had worried about potential differences from the game, but his progress felt consistent, largely thanks to the incredible boost from the 1,000-year snow ginseng. Without it, he knew he would have passed out ages ago. Suddenly, a voice called out to the young master. Baekjun recognized the voice instantly. It was Master Han Song-ah, asking if he was all right. The Sword Saint clan operated under a strict hierarchy. Patriarch at the top, followed by those with direct blood ties, then grandmasters, masters, and finally, trainees at the bottom. Within this structure, political maneuvering was constant, with grandmasters and masters often backing their preferred successors. Naturally, more support meant a greater advantage in the competition for leadership. However, some, like Han Song-ah, chose neutrality, refusing to align with any faction. Baekjun thought, finally, he had anticipated her approach. She offered him a towel, immediately questioning his decision to fight Yu Kang-ho, who had been trained extensively by grandmasters. She bluntly asked if he understood the point of fighting when he was likely going to get beaten badly. Baekjun wiped the sweat from his face, acknowledging her point. He'd have asked the same thing. He assured her he didn't ask for the fight without reason. He had his own ideas. Han Song-ah inquired if the fist technique he was practicing was part of that idea. Baekjun saw the distinct curiosity glimmering in her eyes. Han Song-ah was unique within the Sword Saint clan. Unlike most members obsessed solely with swordsmanship, she held an interest in other forms of combat, like magic, seeking to utilize diverse methods to become stronger. Her position as a master, however, forced her to hold back these interests. Seeing a successor use fist techniques was highly unorthodox here. This was the Sword Saint clan. After all, a place where swordsmanship was traditionally considered the only path. Baekjun directly challenged that notion, asking who decided that. He pointed out that the martial god himself utilized swords, fists, spears, and even archery, all ways of fighting. Why then should the Sword Saint clan restrict itself solely to the sword? Han Song-ah hesitated, seemingly taken aback. Baekjun pressed on, telling Master Han Song-ah to listen closely. He declared he had no intention of adhering to such a stupid, restrictive rule. He would learn whatever he needed to become stronger. She remained silent. Internally, Baekjun knew the truth was more complex. For reasons unknown, the martial god had only left behind sword techniques in his teachings, and a legendary figure never even appeared directly in the Hero's Road game. Han Song-ah finally spoke, conceding that Baekjun's perspective, unrestricted by the clan's dogma, allowed him such thoughts. Baekjun admitted he wasn't perfect. To his surprise, Han Song-ah then offered to help him with his training. There it was, the curiosity he'd sensed. Baekjun cautiously pointed out that associating with him, someone looked down upon by everyone, could negatively impact her standing. Han Song-ah simply stated she was already an outcast anyway. Since they were both looked down upon, she reasoned, it hardly mattered if she taught him. Baekjun considered this. Other masters would have made excuses. For Han Song-ah, to make such an offer wasn't just because she was also marginalized. It showed she genuinely didn't care about others' opinions and possessed real talent as a master. A genuine smile touched Baekjun's lips. He accepted gratefully, stating he would love to be taught by her. He knew Han Song-ah was a hunter with the potential to become a magic swordsman like Yoon Sanga, skilled in mana handling. Learning from her could be highly beneficial. Han Song-ah agreed readily and told him to stay seated. Baekjun started to suggest beginning tomorrow, noting the late hour, but she cut him off sharply, telling him not to sound so weak. She reminded him forcefully how he planned to win against Yu Kang-ho with such an attitude. Baekjun froze, realizing he'd forgotten. Han Song-ah was known to be a completely different, terrifyingly strict person when she was teaching. Looks like training was starting now. No excuses accepted. The bright morning sun glinted off the rooftops of the Sword St. Clan estate. In the training courtyard, Baekjun stretched and warmed up under the watchful eye of Han Song-ah. She stood silently for a moment, observing him. She began the instruction, explaining that the clan used the heaven-surging mind technique as its foundation. While acknowledging it took time to master, she affirmed that as the technique left by the martial god, none was better suited for cultivating mana within the clan. However, she revealed she had slightly modified the version she would teach him. She informed Baekjun she would inject a small amount of her mana into his body, instructing him to focus intently on how she manipulated it. Placing her hand on his back, she channeled her mana into him. Almost immediately, she felt something astonishing, the sheer size of his dantian, his core energy center. She inwardly noted her surprise, understanding now how he could sustain the demanding Qigong technique for so long. The capacity was far beyond that of someone supposedly new to cultivation. On top of that, as she guided her mana, she sensed his vital energy and physical balance were exceptional, almost like a physique bestowed by the heavens themselves. Baekjun quickly grasped the flow, remarking he understood how it was done. He declared he would try it himself now, and Han Song-ah, slightly flustered by his rapid uptake, agreed to support him. Han Song-ah placed her hands on his shoulder and began circulating his own mana. Han Song-ah watched, knowing countless hours were typically needed for such control, especially for someone like the young master who had neglected training his entire life. She reminded herself that innate talent, like dantian size or physique potential, was separate from the learned ability to execute techniques, resolving not to judge prematurely. Then, her eyes widened in pure shock. Baekjun was perfectly replicating the mana circulation she had just demonstrated. She recalled scoffing internally whenever other instructors scrambled to serve a potential successor, finding them more interested in gaining political power than deepening their martial arts knowledge. Yet, what she saw from this young master felt different. He broke his concentration, asking how he did. Han Song-ah, caught completely off guard, stammered that it was perfect. Baekjun casually stretched, yawning, while she marveled internally at his ridiculous talent, replicating the technique flawlessly after seeing it just once. She thought he might possess the most latent talent of all his siblings. Standing straight, she reconsidered her neutral stance, recalling his earlier arguments about the martial god's diverse skills and Baekjun's vow to learn any means necessary to grow stronger. Maybe, just maybe, supporting this underdog wouldn't be such a bad thing, even if he still had a long way to go. Later, Baekjun lounged on his bed with a smug grin, thinking this was almost too easy. He mused that he could never get enough of free skills. He reviewed the conditions for activating the hidden event Han Song-ah's interest, training with non-sword skills, speaking words that piqued her specific interests, and demonstrating a great amount of talent. Fulfilling these would grant him 2 skills from her. He already had the heaven-surging mind technique. The other, he anticipated learning tomorrow. A system window displayed the details of the technique he'd just learned. Heaven-surging mind technique, B, 2-star, modified by Han Song-ah to enhance mana accumulation. He acknowledged that triggering the event, despite seeming easy for him now, was actually very tricky, heavily reliant on possessing undeniable talent. But with his current otherworldly gifts, He felt confident Han Song-ah wouldn't let such potential slip by. Only one day remained until the spar. Outside, clan members watched Baekjun train relentlessly, wondering how he wasn't exhausted yet and speculating if he'd collapse before the fight even began. Han Song-ah, however, was now in full drill sergeant mode, relentlessly pushing Baekjun, correcting his Qinggong form, shouting for him to move faster, fiercer. Baekjun panted, struggling to keep up, but Han Song-ah ran alongside him, offering encouragement mixed with demands for more focus. Other trainees noted his dedication, even as Han Song-ah continued yelling for more speed. As sunset painted the sky, Baekjun finally collapsed on the ground, utterly spent. Han Song-ah declared that was enough for the day, reminding him to ensure he was in top condition for the spar tomorrow. Baekjun thanked instructor Song-ah, admitting he'd learned a lot. She expressed surprise that he'd endured the entire harsh session without complaint. He humbly credited her encouragement, stating he couldn't have done it alone. He then asked her to continue coaching him, mentioning he still had much to work on, particularly the techniques she'd taught him. Han Song-ah agreed, though internally she questioned his assessment. He claimed he had much to work on, yet he'd executed the complex mind technique perfectly on his first try. She found it ironic that the clan master had dismissed him as talentless. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed nearby, startling onlookers. Yu Kangho stormed into the training area, his face a mask of fury. He bellowed, calling Baekjun a bastard. Han Song-ah sighed in annoyance as Kangho stomped towards them. She stepped forward to intervene, but Kangho roughly told her to stay out of it. Seeing her glare, Kangho seemed momentarily cowed before lashing out, punching Baekjun hard across the face. He grabbed Baekjun's shirt, yanking him close, demanding furiously if Baekjun thought he was a joke. Baekjun, though bruised, met his brother's glare, calmly stating he didn't understand. Kangho snarled, asking why Baekjun hadn't told their father he was forfeiting the spar. Baekjun simply asked why he should do that, further enraging Kangho, who spat that there was no way Baekjun could beat him. Kangho shook him violently, ranting about the shame of having to spar someone like him. Baekjun merely asked why his brother seemed so nervous. With a faint smirk, he wondered aloud if Kangho was perhaps scared he might lose. Kangho was stunned into silence. He interjected coolly, reminding Kangho that their father had approved the fight and neither of them could back out now. Kangho looked momentarily lost. Then, he forced a dark chuckle, conceding Baekjun was right and he shouldn't have said those things. He told Baekjun he'd see him tomorrow before adding with a malicious grin that Baekjun surely knew there wasn't any rule forbidding taking an opponent's life during a spar. He warned Baekjun to prepare himself. Baekjun watched him go silently. Kangho's cronies quickly surrounded their young master, fawning over his coolness. As they departed, already placing bets on how many seconds Baekjun would last. Baekjun suggested to Han Song-ah that they head back, and she agreed tiredly. With that confrontation setting the stage, time passed, the tension mounting, and D-Day arrived. On the long-awaited D-Day, dust swirled across the vast training ground where the duel would take place. Ascending the stairs to the viewing platform, Yu Jian wondered aloud who had requested this spectacle, her sister Yumin guessing it might have been Baekjun. Jian seemed skeptical. She noted Yu Kangho was already present, looking eager, while his opponent, Baekjun, was still absent. Jian's gaze swept over the seated elders, the so-called old geezers, inwardly scoffing as she identified them as staunch supporters of her eldest brother, Yu Taerang. Her attention then focused on another figure, Instructor Jaeon, whom she considered the real prize among the instructors, someone she needed to win over to her side. Just then, Yumin called out, noticing an arrival. Footsteps echoed, kicking up more dust as they ascended. Yu Baekjun strode onto the platform, Han Song-ah following closely behind him. Han Song-ah wore a slightly concerned expression. Jian watched them, surprised, mentally questioning why Master Han Song-ah accompanied him. Baekjun surveyed the arena thoughtfully. He remarked with a relieved sigh his gratitude for the protective barrier surrounding the stage. though he quipped he wished it stopped the biting cold too. He turned to Han Song-ah, asking for her agreement, but she remained silent, simply observing him. After a moment, she spoke hesitantly, admitting she didn't think he would lose. Baek-jun smiled faintly, recalling how worried his servant Sungmin had been. A brief memory surfaced of Sungmin fretting over Kang-ho's notorious roughness. Concerned Baek-jun would get hurt regardless of the outcome. Baek-jun paused for a moment. He then lightly teased Han Song-ah, remarking that she sounded like his official master now. She looked momentarily flustered and Song-ah quickly handed Baek-jun a towel. Their exchange was interrupted by a loud announcement. The patriarch was arriving. Ush! Baek-jun turned towards the entrance, telling Han Song-ah they should prepare themselves. Leaning closer, he asked conspiratorially if she wanted to hear something interesting. She inquired what it was. He recounted how Kang-ho used to travel widely in his youth, a fact Han Song-ah confirmed she'd heard. Baek-jun continued, explaining that during those travels, Kang-ho encountered a monster that severely injured his right arm, requiring difficult treatment. Han Song-ah acknowledged the story, handing Baek-jun his outer robe as he thanked her. Baek-jun then mentioned the reason he brought it up, just as a quest notification pinged silently in his vision. The quest, titled, I Became the Shame of the Household, tasked him with teaching the bullying Kang-ho a lesson by winning the duel, offering 300p and proficiency in the martial gods book as a reward. Life is the real deal, indeed. A small smirk played on Baek-jun's lips. He told Han Song-ah not to worry so much, his gaze drifting towards his father's seat. An attendant with a distinct bowl haircut stood ready, bowing low before stepping forward to officiate. He announced loudly that the duel would now begin. From the viewing platform high above, the arena looked imposing. Baek-jun fastened his fighting gloves, his expression calm. Across the dusty expanse, Kang-ho strode forward, gripping a wooden practice sword, his face contorted with barely concealed fury. The two brothers faced each other. Baek-jun noted Kang-ho seemed in good shape, then allowed a smirk, interpreting Kang-ho's visible tension as confirmation of his earlier taunt about being scared. He'd take that as a yes. Kang-ho, meanwhile, silently seethed, vowing internally to kill his younger brother. He spat out his murderous intent, declaring the duel would now begin. With explosive force, Kang-ho launched himself forward, the ground cracking beneath his feet. Baek-jun watched his brother's charge, his mind racing. Kang-ho unleashed his signature move, the heaven-surging sword technique, though he knew he could only manage 5 dragon fangs instead of the full 9. 5 swirling energy dragons materialized, roaring towards Baek-jun. Kang-ho sneered, thinking this attack was more than enough for someone who hadn't even learned martial arts. Baek-jun braced himself, the torrent of energy rushing closer, his eyes narrowing in concentration. His mind flashed back to his previous life, hunched over his keyboard, slamming the desk in frustration. He recalled the countless failed attempts trying to clear the notoriously difficult Baek-jun route in Heroes Road, specifically being stuck on how to defeat Kang-ho. Since almost no one played that route, he couldn't ask anyone for advice, feeling utterly stuck but convinced there had to be some way. He remembered brainstorming wildly, thinking about random attacks before a sudden idea struck him. It felt a bit cowardly, relying on game mechanics, maybe even a bit like using pocket sand, but it might just work. A key, fun factor of the game was combining skills in creative ways. The memory faded. Just the night before, someone had urged him to rest. Baek-jun had dismissed him, wanting privacy. Alone, he had consulted the martial gods book, planning his strategy, how to combine his limited skills to defeat the much more experienced Kang-ho. He scrolled through the purchasable skills list. His eyes landed on ground kick, a simple technique to kick up dust and rocks. He envisioned Kang-ho laughing derisively at the seemingly pathetic move, only to be momentarily blinded by the debris. The plan solidified, ground kick enhanced with his icy attribute manifestation. The resulting explosion of icy shrapnel would catch Kang-ho completely off guard, likely causing him to instinctively block and take minor damage. Kang-ho would curse him for using dirty tricks, but the distraction was key. While Kang-ho was blinded and reeling, Baekjun would follow up with a mana-infused strike directly to his face, forcing him to drop his sword. Seizing the opportunity, Baekjun would grab Kang-ho's wrist and use his own sword against him for the finishing blow. From the viewing platform, Han Sung-ah watched with a mixture of surprise and apprehension. The other instructors, particularly those aligned with Taerang, looked on with disbelief or barely concealed contempt. Even Yumin seemed momentarily stunned by the unfolding events. Baekjun, having planned this counter, executed his strategy. He performed an arm lock, a seemingly low-level technique, but one perfect for disruption. Dust and debris erupted from the ground, just as Kang-ho's 5 Dragon Fangs attack closed in. The energy tendrils dispersed harmlessly against the sudden cloud. Baekjun then used the Qinggong technique's swift steps, expending mana to instantly jump a significant distance back, easily evading the aftermath of Kang-ho's dissipated attack. Landing lightly, Baekjun looked at his disoriented brother, commenting on how embarrassing it was. He taunted Kang-ho, reminding him of his earlier threats to kill him, pointing out that at this rate, Kang-ho wouldn't even manage to land scratch. Kang-ho, sputtering incoherently with rage and dust, barely managed to tell Baekjun to shut up. Baekjun continued his psychological assault, addressing his brother calmly. He asked if Kang-ho knew why their father allowed him to run wild with his antics despite his bullying nature. It was, Baekjun stated coolly, because Kang-ho was talented. Talented enough, he added pointedly, to go around bullying others, though he admitted he didn't truly understand their father's reasoning in valuing such talent. He mockingly questioned if their father really thought Kang-ho was talented. Incensed beyond reason, Kang-ho screamed for Baekjun to shut up and launched another attack, a wide, curving sword energy arc called Moon Slash. Baekjun stood his ground, seemingly preparing to block the energy slash head-on with his bare hands. Kang-ho grinned savagely, calling Baekjun an idiot for attempting such a foolish block, predicting his arrogance would be his end, sneering that his hands were about to be sliced off. But as the Moon Slash reached him, Baekjun didn't block. Instead, he activated a tribute manifestation, channeling fiery yang energy into his fist. He punched forward, not at the slash itself, but seemingly through it. The clash resulted in a brilliant explosion of energy. Kang-ho looked utterly shocked, wondering how Baekjun possessed such enhanced energy. Instructor Jaeon also watched the display, intrigued. Kang-ho stumbled back, asking how it was possible. Baekjun reminded him that in the Sword Saint clan, only the strong survive. The strong prey on the weak, and the weak are devoured. Leaping high into the air, Baekjun combined attribute manifestation with strike, plummeting towards the ground and slamming his fist down. The impact created a massive shockwave, tearing up the arena floor and sending waves of dust and energy outwards. Han Sung-ah shielded her face from the blast, unable to see through the thick dust cloud. She called out uncertainly for the young master. When the dust settled, a notification chimed for Baekjun. Quest cleared. I became the shame of the household. He received 300p and increased proficiency for his Martial Gods book. Kang-ho lay defeated in a crater amidst the debris, completely incapacitated. Standing over his fallen brother, Baekjun declared that since he was now the stronger one, he would be taking Kang-ho's authority, mansion, finances, and everything else. That, he stated coolly towards the stunned onlookers on the platform, is what the winner gets. Yumin simply mouthed, wow. The instructors murmured amongst themselves, wondering how Baekjun had mastered enhanced energy techniques with an attribute in just a week, seemingly without teaching. One instructor clarified he'd heard Master Han Sung-ah helped, but was told she only taught basic circulation and Qinggong. This meant Baekjun learned the fist techniques and energy enhancement entirely on his own, a feat deemed impossible, making them question if he was some kind of genius. Yu Jianjian pondered this, dismissing the idea of simple genius. Baekjun had never shown talent before, despite their father's attempts to train him since childhood. Could it be, she wondered, looking toward her father, that their father's assessment of Baekjun had been wrong all along? Yu Muhak remained seated, his expression unreadable, though a faint flicker of interest crossed his face. He ordered Han Song-ah to tell Yu Baekjun to come to his room. As Baekjun walked away from the ruined arena, Han Song-ah joined him, congratulating him on the job well done. She admitted she had worried he might get hurt, but was amazed he won without a single wound. Baekjun brushed off her concern, reminding her he'd told her not to worry. He glanced back at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. He felt confident she'd agree if he asked her to become his official master now, seeing the admiration in her eyes. He might have pushed it if this were still just a game. She handed him his clean outer robe, which he accepted with thanks. He decided against rushing things. She would be his official master soon enough. Just then, an attendant approached, informing young Master Yu Baekjun that the patriarch wished to see him. Baekjun understood immediately. His father would ask him to choose a grandmaster to learn from. He informed the attendant he would go as soon as he was dressed. However, as he walked away, he thought that simply getting a grandmaster wasn't enough. Kangho, beaten by a supposed weakling after only a week of training, would be treated by Ju Jungwon. His image within the clan was utterly ruined. But Baekjun knew there was more he could take from his defeated brother. He decided with a sly grin, he would do what he did before in the game. Entering Yu Muhak's spacious room, Baekjun saw the 4 grandmasters lined up, awaiting his decision. His father sat, his face impassive but radiating authority. Baekjun knelt respectfully. Yu Muhak acknowledged Baekjun's stated desire to learn martial arts. He reminded Baekjun that the grandmasters were the pillars of the clan, and only the truly talented could receive their teachings. He then asked Baekjun directly if he possessed that talent. Baekjun met his father's gaze and replied simply, "Do I not?" causing a nearby servant girl to gasp. Yu Muhak conceded Baekjun certainly had the spirit. However, he stated Baekjun could not be taught by all of them. The pillars of the clan couldn't be controlled by mere blood relations, so if one refused to teach him, Baekjun had to accept it. Baekjun realized his father wanted him to choose just one, just as he'd anticipated. He considered the 4 grandmasters, John Daekwon, Lee Kunmo, Jaeyun, Cheon Jongwon. 3 of them already supported other successors. Asking them would result in refusal or useless training. To activate the specific hidden event he wanted, related to the most powerful techniques, there was only one viable option. Looking directly at the female grandmaster, Baekjun declared his choice with a confident smile. He would choose Grandmaster Jaeyun.